It's another week, guys. Third to the end of the NBA season. We have almost made it. Head-to-head leaguers, you guys might be done right now. So if you're still watching, thanks. Don't exactly know why. No recovery time. That's what I say. Just keep watching the show forever. That's the way to do it, right? I mean, as a show host, that's the way I would prefer you do it. But I don't... I'm fully aware that we're all human, and at some point, we probably all need a little bit of a break from fantasy basketball. I just happen to be kind of a lunatic. My break for fantasy basketball, or the one that I feel like I want to take, is like right around the end of the finals. It was like 2 weeks before free agency. That's my brain's like, I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about right now. But that's still months away. That's 3 months from now. Let's get through the regular season. Then we'll have our lessons learned series. We're going to look at how the big box sites did in their rankings, because that'll actually teach us a lot about how to approach the Yahoo draft board in particular. I like to mostly talk Yahoo on this show. We'll go through some of the team reviews. That's also in there. We don't break for the offseason. Hell no. We go year-round here on Fantasy NBA Today. I don't know. So last offseason, I stopped doing the shows live on video in the offseason, mostly because the timing was weird and also because people weren't watching them. They were listening. Traditional pods are still getting listened to, but folks stopped watching YouTube because I think, I don't know, algorithm, things of that nature. I don't know why I'm talking about this stuff. We got a lot to get through today. I just figured I'd kind of say hello to you all. I'm Dan Bespris. It's Fantasy NBA Today. You can follow me on social media at Dan Bespris, DanBesbris. This, of course, is Fantasy NBA Today, a Sports Ethos presentation. SportsEthos.com. Check out the baseball draft guide, available now. Baseball season starts in 3 days. Last few days to get your draft guide before your season starts on the baseball side. Do it now. Awesome content. Between Joe's ranks and the draft tracker, yeah, I mean, you're just destroying it. Let's talk about some of the games. My sinuses are a mess, so apologies in advance if you guys hear a sniffle or a sneeze or something on today's show. Can't possibly explain why. My family's all healthy, so all I can assume is that the fan that we have on in the bedroom blew a bug up my nose. I don't know. That's what I got. New Orleans took care of Detroit to no one's surprise. Detroit is a very bad basketball team, and they're even worse when they don't have their best player out there. As far as the Pelicans go, we were kind of watching the last couple of games just to see what they would be without Brandon Ingram. And the answer is kind of the same. Trey Murphy had one of his oops games, 1 for 12 shooting, but he did have a steal and 4 blocks. And basically that was the thing. The expectation was with Ingram down, you were going to get more Herb Jones and more Trey Murphy. And that's really what you've gotten. And then obviously a little bit more Zion and a little bit more McCollum. The question on the Ingram absence was, would this force the Pelicans to go to Jonas Valanciunas a tiny bit more? And he had 5 fouls in 20 minutes in this ball game. But lately he's been horrible. And I think I've talked about it a little bit on this show, but honestly, a couple days off, I think we can pretty much just sort of refresh on everything. I didn't draft Valanciunas anywhere this year. 0 places. Any cash league, any free league, I didn't have him because I figured that this was the alignment the Pelicans were going to go to. JV might start, but he wasn't going to play that much. If Nance was healthy, he'd be sort of the defensive switch everything guy. They could go Zion at center. And then JV got off to a great start. He played, 2.5, 3 really good months this year, but he has completely vanished now. And so as someone who doesn't have Valanciunas, it does make it a little bit harder for me to say, oh, well, this is what I would do if I was you. But that said, that's what you guys are watching me to do. So if I'm you on JV, I try to hang on a little bit longer. Basically until the end of time with him. It's sort of most like an indefinite barely hang on. I honestly don't know how bad he would need to be and for how long for me to say it's time to go, because it feels like that time should be now. He's been horrible for 3 weeks in a row. I mean, like, beyond unstartable. 18, 19 minutes a ball game. Just not even close. I do think we got it. We need to give him some kind of chance here with Ingram out. And Ingram's out for a couple of weeks, mind you. So my vote on Valanciunas is hang on just a little bit longer. But listen, if you don't want to, I don't blame you. You can cut him loose. Again, I didn't draft him anywhere, so I don't care if you cut him loose. It's not like it's going to be an affront to me. I didn't want to have him on my team to begin with. So now I'm trying to do the if I was in your shoes game, and it's not as easy as it looks. Probably doesn't look that easy. No Cade Cunningham, no Oscar Thompson for the year, of course, and then no Simone Fontecchio, and no Isaiah Stewart either. So it's all worth mentioning when you say the following. Chimezie Metu had a really nice ball game, 17 and 8, 3 assists, a steal, and a block on good percentages. He did have 5 fouls, but who cares because he played 39 whopping minutes. And I'm assuming, we'll see, that this level of production is going to buy him another go at it. Pistons aren't going to be competitive, basically ever. And frankly, having Cade Cunningham in the lineup might help a guy like Metu because they can go get a shot for him. He had to do it himself in this ballgame, and it still went okay. Pistons had 20 assists in the ballgame. Not great. I'm not adding Metu after this one, but I could probably be convinced if we see him do it a couple of times. Not to say that I think it's just going to magically happen every day and he's just going to be great now, but this is a really nice sign. They don't have a power forward behind Fontecchio, and we don't know when he's coming back. Now, all of this goes out the window if Simone shows up again here in the next game or two, and it's like, oh, Fontecchio's back. All right, great. Then you go with him, obviously. But until that day, we're looking for someone, anyone at all, to pick up some fantasy value on this team, and there basically hasn't been anybody. And Malachi Flynn had a decent game in 25 minutes as well, but 25 minutes is not going to be, sustainably enough time for him. Jaden Ivey is a points league guy, although typically when Cade is out, he does enough that you could start him in 9-cat. Talking about Ivy. James Wiseman, empty double-double guy with no Jalen Duren around. If that's what you need. I did pick him up in one league because I needed rebounds and field goal percent, and I just pray he doesn't have to take that many free throws. And I don't need blocks as much from my center in that league. It's a center where I have a league where I have Brook Lopez. So I have the blocks, but I don't have the rebounds and the field goal percent. So I thought, all right, Wiseman will sort of pair up here nicely for however long Duren's out, which, again, what are they going to do? Rush him back? Now, the rest of these guys, they're just, this is a mess. Royale mess with cheese, mess Royale. Keep an eye on Metu. Again, Wiseman, points, rebounds, field goal percent, streamer. That's it. Let's try to make a little headway here. We got a lot of teams to cover. Philly, Paul Reed had 5 defensive stats again. And I continue to have this weird sinking feeling about his overall game. And yet, he continues to put up really, really nice defensive numbers more than anything else, which we kind of knew he had in him. It was like on the year in 19 minutes, he was at 0.8 steals and a block. And you thought, all right, well, if those minutes go up by, 50%, then the steals and blocks should as well. But he's on a tear right now. He's got 7 steals, 4 blocks in his last 3 ball games. He's been able to cover up the fact that his other stuff has actually been weighed down over that stretch. And that's why I continue to have this sort of sinking feeling with Paul Reed. But as long as he continues to steal more than one a game and block more than one a game, it almost doesn't matter what his other stuff is because he's a good percentages guy. Free throw is fine. Not great, but fine. Field goal percent is good. And so if you get decent to good percentages, a few rebounds, and good defensive stats, you don't really need that much else to hit value in 9-cat. Last 2 weeks, he's number 113 in 9-category leagues, despite 7-7 is the numbers from the field. He actually hasn't shot the ball all that well over that stretch. So I'm left with no choice but to say you can keep starting Paul Reed. I don't care that Campaign had 23 points. He got hot off the bench. His fantasy game is usually pretty whack. Maxey, Tobias Harris waking back up again. Oubre's been pretty good lately. So you go those 4, Maxey, Harris, Oubre, Paul Reed. And I wouldn't extend it at all beyond that in Philly. Clippers are in a weird nosedive these days. That team has really they've totally fallen apart. Remember when they were tied for the best record in the West? They're 5.5 games back of that now. And that was only like 3 weeks ago. Some of that's because the other teams at the top of the West keep winning. The Nuggets in particular, they're winning at like an 80% clip over that stretch. But the Clippers just look lost right now, and they got 3 weeks to sort it out before the playoffs start. Strange. I don't fully understand it. We're in a Zubats minor and mini I put together. Mini resurgence. 13 and 10, 4 blocks. He goes through these stretches where he blocks a few extra shots and it all sort of levels out. He's a 100 to 150 range guy. We call them the Doesn't Matter fan club. Doesn't really matter. Play him if you need big man stats. Don't play him if you don't. Otherwise, you're just going Harden, Kawhi, and PG on this team. We move on. Cleveland got Evan Mobley back. That's the good news. The bad news is they lost this game by almost 40 points. Oof. Yowza. Back-to-back time for Mobley. We don't know if he's going to be playing in it. It's against Charlotte, so they should be able to take care of business in that one. I would assume he plays in the other games this week, but I guess we don't know. And in terms of minutes cap, we also don't really know about that. They'll bring him along somewhat slowly because for as poorly as things have gone lately for the Cavaliers, they are still the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Jammed up with a bunch of teams, but pretty far ahead of falling back towards the play-in, which I think is the big fear for a lot of these clubs. Likely they'll be fine. 2 easy games in a row, so they can kind of figure it out on the fly. What we don't know from this ball game, and the data we were hunting was, can Karis LeVert maintain some value even with Mobley back? This is, again, with Donovan Mitchell still out, Max Strus still out. One thing we can say is that with George Niang coming off the bench and minutes no longer guaranteed, he's not even worth a 3-point stream anymore. It's really, okay, you're starting Mobley, obviously. You're starting Jared Allen. You're starting Darius Garland. What we don't really know is what you're doing with Karis LeVert. I'm inclined to believe that he can still be pretty sort of like fringe level, even with Mobley back. He started this game, so they're doing the, like, LeVert, you get to start for Donovan Mitchell ordeal as opposed to bringing him off as a sixth man type. And I don't know if that's a great idea long term, but it is what they're doing now. So probably give LeVert one more game to sort this thing out because this one was a really hard one to get a read on. They scored 84 freaking points. Heat had no problem in this game. They put up a $121, and it was blowout minutes real early. So DeLon Wright played 30. Thomas Bryant played 20. Haywood Highsmith, 25. Minutes were all over the map. What are you doing? Butler, Rozier, Adebayo. The only 3 Heat you're playing right now. With Jimmy back, all of the fringy guys push back farther. By the way, there was no Jaquez healthy for this game either. He was joined the infirmed. No Duncan Robinson, no Tyler Hero, blah, 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 blah. If Duncan comes back, I probably play him because he likely takes Patty Mills' spot in there, and he was putting up pretty good numbers filling in for Hero, but we don't have an update on him yet today, so we shuffle along. Josh Giddey had a rare better game. I don't care. Shea had his worst game of the entire season in this one, which ended a fantasy season for me. That's sad. Man, that dude was good all year and then pooped himself in this one. Well, they don't know we're in our fantasy playoffs, do they? I don't care about anything that happened on the Thunder side of this ball game. I know Lou Dort left after 22 minutes, but there really isn't anyone that fills in for the Thunder when someone goes down. We've had these little Isaiah Joe sightings in the past. Kenrich Williams was okay. Cason Wallace has had a couple of games where he scored a bit more. They traded for Gordon Hayward, who I tried to warn them sucks, but now they're going to believe me. Anyway, don't need to worry about it because nothing changes there. Milwaukee is notable only because they have a great off-day schedule this week. They go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We've talked about this before. We'll talk about it more on our streaming show later on today, which I'm hoping I can go back-to-back with this one, but, we'll see how timing goes. Obviously, Giannis, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, Damian Lillard, those guys are all startable against the games cap. But you got a whole bunch of other guys that you can play because of the fact that they go on the non-overload days this week. So Crowder, if you wanted to go Connaughton, obviously Portis. I don't think I'd go Pat Beverly unless someone was out, but they're just like, I know that these guys are not putting up big numbers. Portis will be pretty good. He's on a weird kick right now, which we know how the sort of hot and cold goes with him. But when you look at this week and you got that Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday thing, even you getting 3 bad games is better than the zeros you'd get from guys that you'd have to leave on your bench. Let's keep going. Golden State lost at Minnesota. Good ball game, though. Fought tooth and nail in this one. Warriors lost to a couple in a row. They're now 1 game up on the red-hot Rockets for the last play-in spot. Didn't see that coming. Steph, obviously a play. Kuminga and Klay Thompson are, I think, in on plays. I'm going to say yes to Chris Paul. Those minutes have been a little bit bouncy lately. And then you got a whole bunch of weird decisions. Like Andrew Wiggins, yeah, I mean, you get like 14, 15 points, but if you get anything else, you don't really know. So I'm kind of out on Wiggins. Gary Payton had a better ball game here, but no. Brandon Pajemski's a no. Trace Jackson Davis is the closest of all of them. Well, Draymond Green is more of your sort of punt points, yes, but generally he's kind of a doesn't matter level guy, but probably leans towards a yes. Trace Jackson Davis is an interesting one because he had 5 more defensive stats, and everybody, and like, I get it. There's been a lot of really good stuff happening lately, and 28 minutes is a huge number for him. That's great news. But also, he's shown himself to be basically a full punt free throw guy. He's been awful at the foul line. And the bad news is he's getting there. So as good as he's playing in rebounds and steals and blocks and field goal percent, most games, he didn't have a good field goal percent in this one. The free throws have been so bad that it's actually dragged him outside of the top 100. I think if you need big man stats, you probably just have to go for it with Jackson Davis and pray you catch him on a week in head-to-head if he only takes, 4 or 5 free throws over the week. Roto, if you have a little bit of wiggle room, like if you have the best free throw percent in the league and there's a gap or honestly, whatever, if there's a little bit of a gap behind you in free throw percent, that's a guy you could play with. So like feel it out a little bit, but that's the general, I think, move for the Warriors right now. On the fantasy side, I should say. Naz Reid. Oh, baby. 20 and 12, 6 threes, a steal, and a couple of blocks. Mondo game from Naz. Slow-mo was a little better here. 10, 6, and 5, 2 steals and a block. I mean, this is basically what you want if you played him. The 26 minutes are probably not enough long-term, but he is a little bit more involved now with Karl Anthony Towns out than he was before that. I still am skeptical of Anderson as an everyday type of guy. The steals, the blocks, the boards, the assists, that's going to keep him pretty close, even if the other stuff isn't as great. And, getting the nice numbers on those lately has definitely made him a play over the last week. They've gone through a stretch where Gobert missed a couple of ball games in there, so Slow-mo had a little bit of a bump in time on the floor. And I think that's probably what it comes down to. If he's playing 26 minutes, I don't think I'm starting him in all formats. If he's at 28, I probably am, which is funny, I know, to be that close to it. So probably Slow-mo ends up in kind of that no man's land again, 100-ish range, 100 to 130, something like that. And where if you need some boards, some assists out of a forward spot, steals out of a forward spot, field goal percent, but probably not as much free throw. We're at this part of the year where specialist appeal is actually a really big deal. So to me, say, he's going to be 115, you can't play. No, that wouldn't be accurate, because if he provides stats you need, this is the time to just go and do it. All these fringy guys, their rank no longer really matters. We're at that part of the year. There's been a little bit of a push this season, I think, to argue that no rank matters at all, which I don't fully agree with. I mean, the guy ranked 40th is better than the guy ranked 80th. But where that statement rings true is in this range. Guys that are, and we call them the doesn't matter group on this podcast, the guys that are between 100 and 140 or something like that, where they're all separated by like one slightly better game. The guy who's ranked 140th, if his 30th game this year was a big one instead of a small one, he'd probably be ranked 115th. That's how close they are in there. So for me to point at the 115th ranked guy and say, oh, well, look, 115th ranked, you can't start him. No, that right now would be totally inaccurate. Earlier in the year, I think you could probably get away with that type of, if if I had said something like that on the podcast, say, oh, well, you know what? Like long term, we've played him every day. He's not really helping your fantasy team. But right now, who cares what his rank is over the entire season? If the guy is going to give you pluses in stats you're hunting, then that guy becomes a play. Indiana and the Lakers combined to put up 295 points in regulation. Not only was the score ridiculous, but the Pacers went into a foul mode like college ball, like with 85 seconds left in the ball game. Lakers hit something like, I don't know, 8 out of 10 free throws down the stretch, and Indy hit 3 or 4 3-pointers during that last minute and a half. So a game that was already probably going to be at about 275, 280 points jumped another 15. And everybody had some fun. This is an everybody has fun kind of game. Andrew Nembhard was actually decent here. Don't pick him up. Interestingly, Tyrese Halliburton had one of the worst games on either side. Aaron Nesmith was playable here, but we've downgraded him from a very soft hold to a schedule play. Nembhard is a schedule guy also. Doug McDermott probably doesn't even make it to schedule level. TJ McConnell is a play in all formats. He's still just rolling, man. He played 18 total minutes in this game, but he went absolutely buck wild in them. 15 shots in 18 minutes. He also had 7 assists and a steal. He's cooking these days. And then on the Lakers side, there was no D'Angelo Russell, but Spencer Dinwiddie has really settled in nicely over the last 3 or 4 games for LA, mostly because of his defense. His defense has been really good. This game, the offense woke up, got to the free throw line, was driving, hitting some threes. All that to say, it won't matter when D'Angelo Russell comes back because this isn't Dinwiddie's job to score 26 points every game. It was his job in this one to be more aggressive on offense because they needed him to be because D'Angelo Russell was out. But D'Lo was out with an illness, so by all accounts, he'll probably be back for the Lakers' next game, which is in Milwaukee tomorrow. If he's not, do I think Dinwiddie scores 26 again? Probably not, but he is playing with confidence right now, and he probably gets stuck on Dame in that game as well, so he's going to be laser focused. Just something to keep in mind for tomorrow. Watch the injury report. I don't generally like Dinwiddie's fantasy game, but he's going to have to be efficient with this Lakers team. His job is not going to be to chuck. It's going to be to take the open shots, and that actually probably helps him more than it hurts. Well, we managed to get through 12 teams, and we're 20-some-odd minutes into the podcast, so not exactly making the world's greatest time. As we turn the clock back to Saturday, I want to remind everybody that is joining us here part way to please follow on Twitter at Dan Vespris. That's for the live viewers that are jumping in halfway through the show. For everybody else, this is a great opportunity to remind you to check out our pals over at manscaped.com. Promo code there is Ethos20, Ethos20, to get your 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. 20% off, free shipping. Ethos20 at manscaped.com. 3 years in a row, they've been a partner here on the podcast, and we are extraordinarily grateful to them for that. Saturday, as we go backwards through the weekend, Brooklyn sucks. Cam Johnson was playing well. He's out with a toe injury. Out of the blue. What a pain in my neck. I will say that with Cam Johnson out, Schroeder probably is playable again. He's very much on the wrong side of the doesn't matter group, mostly because of Cam Thomas, honestly. That is a, for the Nets, they don't have anything going well, but Cam Thomas is a bit of a usage vacuum on that team. And when he's out, everybody gets a big bump. When Cam Johnson is out, everybody only gets a little tiny bump. But for Schroeder, that probably gets him up to that kind of like, all right, well, if you need some points, some assists, that probably works. Otherwise, unless I hear something else, I'm not doing anything else. How long before the Nets start giving other guys days off? Mikal Bridges is never going to want one, but, what if Nick Claxton rests for a day? Should we be ready with Daron Sharp? Are they going small with Dorian Finney-Smith at center? There might be some silly season things happening in Brooklyn here soon, but not quite yet. Dennis Smith Jr., Keita Bates-Diop also listed out for tonight already. Who cares? The Knicks, Isaiah Hartenstein back up to 26 minutes. We still don't know if Mitchell Robinson is showing up. He's been practicing, so we assume it's relatively soon. But we heard about that like 4 days ago, and we still haven't seen him. So Hartenstein with the minutes cap lifted up a little bit, not lifted all the way, I should say raised up, is a big-time play. Big winner here. Hartenstein, finally, good Lord, that 22-minute, 23-minute limit. That was like a month and change. Oh, my Lord, was that rough. Miles McBride is your fill-in for OG Anunoby. He played all 48 minutes in this ball game. Ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. But if anybody's playing 48 minutes in the NBA, they should be in a fantasy lineup. That's just sort of the rule. Even Tony Snell could put up numbers in 48 minutes. Precious Achiuwa, to no one's surprise, is a drop. Sacramento at New Orleans. Orlando. Oral. Whoops. Keon Ellis, 19, 5, and 6, 2 steals, a block, and 4 3-pointers. This is what we were talking about when I said, hey, he's going to get you defensive stats basically every single ball game. The upside is, what if he takes a couple extra actual shots from the field? Keon Ellis over the last week is averaging 6.3 field goal attempts per ball game, and he's number 42 over that stretch. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 5.9 field goal attempts a game. We're talking about 6 shots a night, and he's number 39 because he's averaging 3.5 defensive stats and almost 2 3-pointers a game. And this contest obviously helped. 4 3-pointers, got some boards, some assists, some points. It sort of lifted everything up. But good Lord, this is what we were talking about with that upside. Frankly, Malik Monk was awful in this game. Frankly, the Kings are better with Ellis playing instead of Kevin Huerter. I don't think there's any question that someone getting hurt on this team was maybe the best thing that could have happened for the Kings. They're still imperfect. I mean, who isn't in the NBA? But he's made them so much better. Keon Ellis was a plus 18. Keegan Murray was a plus 21 in a game they won by 2. The bench unit for the Kings was absolutely atrocious. What do you do with Malik Monk? Well, you probably have to hang on. He's been pretty good outside of this ball game. He went on Twitter to say, I couldn't throw a stone in the ocean, but at least we won. Light the beam. Good team type of tweet, but yeesh, 0 for 11. That's a weak killer right there. Anyway, I love this lineup for the Kings. You got 4 starters that you can start in fantasy, and then Monk off the bench. Harrison Barnes is back to being terrible, as we kind of knew he would. Kevin Huerter, you take your time, buddy. Take your time. Jonathan Isaac on the other side, 25 points in 23 minutes. We talked about him on the podcast last week as someone I was like, yeah, I know you can't really use him in head-to-head because he could just get a day off at any point and you wouldn't even know it was coming. But look at what he can do when he's in there. I think we're talking about a month now where Jonathan Isaac's been inside the top 100 in 16 minutes a ball game. I mean, this is the magic of Jonathan Isaac. He's top 30 the last 2 weeks in 17 minutes. He's an obvious roto play. Any roto league you're in, he's a play. I get it. Head-to-head, it's tough. And Orlando has a terrible schedule this week. They're off until Wednesday, and then they play Wednesday, Friday, which are the overload days, so you might not get to use him anyway. But, maybe Saturday could make an argument for him. It's a back-to-back. Probably going to skip one of them or get depressed minutes in one of them. Either way, he lives. Charlotte continues to be very bad at basketball. Alexei Pokusevski had 9, 5, and 4. He's a watch list guy. Nothing more than that. Nick Richards, your low-end center. Trey Mann, your shooting guard who can rebound a little bit, but with big fantasy holes. Bridges is a go. Mitsic is a go with Cody Martin out. He's got his problems too, though. Brandon Miller's a go. Nobody else is a go. That's it. For Atlanta, this game was over early, so Garrison Matthews had 20 points off the bench. Bruno Fernando had 25 off the bench. That stuff isn't going to happen in a competitive basketball game. For Atlanta, you're not adjusting what you're doing against the game's cap. You're obviously playing DeJounte Murray. You're playing Clint Capella. You're playing Bogdan Bogdanovic. You're hoping that Jalen Johnson can get back by the end of this week. And you're probably playing DeAndre Hunter, although, again, when he cools off from 2, which I think is what we've seen happen here over the last 2 or 3 ball games, his value can tank a bit. So if you wanted to bench him, I'm okay with that. Head-to-head wise, Atlanta has one of the best schedules this week. That's why I bring them up. They play today, which is kind of like a coin flip to be an overload day, more like 40-60. Likely to have an open spot, especially with how many guys are getting ruled out right now. But then they also go Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. So they play one overload day on Wednesday, but Thursday, Saturday are a couple of really nice light ones mixed in there. So Atlanta, 4-game week, and only one of them is on an overload. That's pretty good. Which brings into the equation guys like Vit Krejci, Fernando, maybe, I don't know, Garrison Matthews. That's a tough one to push on you guys. Fernando would be the safest of those guys because he's actually playing a center spot. Unless we hear from Onyeka Okongwu, but he probably sits out at least a game this week, maybe more. Kind of makes that one tougher. But Atlanta with a good schedule, just something to think about, and we'll talk more about that on our streaming show. Toronto, nice competitive basketball game. I don't care that they lost, but this just meant that the regulars actually got to play over 30 minutes and were sort of not great, but fine enough. Gary Trent, 31 points, took him 26 shots to get there, but 31 points, nothing to laugh at. Kelly Olynyk, double-double, 14, 6, and 10, 2 steals and a block. That's what you want out of him. And then you got a whole lot of maybes. Grady Dick, no for me against the game's cap. Abaji, close. He missed all 3 of his free throws in this game, or actually would have been a pretty good ball game for Ochai. I think he's basically a coin flip. If you're starting Abaji, you're going for steals, basically. Bruce Brown, also kind of a maybe. I think both those guys, frankly, all 3 I just mentioned, Dick, Abaji, and Brown, probably all fall into the who cares, doesn't matter, whatever you want to call that group. And probably towards the back end of it, more towards 150 than 100. But they each have a little bit of a specialist appeal. Grady Dick, points and threes. Abaji, a few boards and some steals. Bruce Brown, boards and assists, basically. None of them good enough at enough things to be a start, but all 3 just kind of good enough to be a specialist-ish. Toronto's schedule sucks this week, so at least there's that. For Washington, Kuzma ruled out for the next ball game. We know that already. What I don't know is what they're doing with the center spot, because Rashawn Holmes got another 28 minutes here. Marvin Bagley's back now. I would assume that slides towards a timeshare as Bagley gets his legs underneath him, which should probably end up being kind of bad for both guys. But until that time, you can start Poole, Holmes, probably Kispert again with Kuzma out, because there's just a lot of shots left over. Again, I have no idea why Kispert can't hit a free throw anymore, which, like, when Kuzma's in, pretty much makes it so you can't play Corey, because, like, 10, 11, 12 shots probably isn't enough if he's bad at the foul line. But with Kuzma out, I have to assume that those shots go up to 13, 14 range, or at least reliably 12. And so that's probably enough for Corey. And then Denny Avdia is set to do a lot of stuff, and you just have to hope that his efficiency doesn't tank your team. Last time Kuzma was out, Justin Champagnie was actually kind of okay, but I'm not going to take that plunge. That's too risky. This was the second half of a back-to-back for the Celtics, and so half of their guys were resting. They do not have a back-to-back this week or next week, so I presume anyone who's healthy will be playing, but we don't actually know who's healthy for the Celtics. Sounds like Drew Holiday is actually hurt. He's missed, 3-4 games in a row now. Derek White is questionable for the next one with a right hand sprain. They're going to be going very easy on their dudes, and for that reason, Peyton Pritchard is a guy you can just keep on using. Sam Hauser's a little bit more questionable because if you have Tatum and Brown both in, which I'm going to assume they are, I don't know that, like, if Derek White is out and Drew Holiday is out, I don't know that that's enough for Hauser. Plus, he's not going to shoot 8 for 9 every ball game. Good Lord, he's been hot in a couple of games lately. But you'll have Porzingis back. You'll have Horford in. He was in for this ball game, but that'll push everybody down a peg. And so then it's like, all right, well, one of these guys gets to start. Is it Hauser or is it Pritchard? It's probably Pritchard, although he didn't start in this ball game. So, what the hell do I know? But if both of their starting backcourt guys are out, it feels like they probably would want a point guard. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. It's possible that both of them end up being useful, Pritchard and Hauser. But you kind of need to wait on the weather report, the injury report before doing anything with it. Chicago's got their main guys back, which makes them very easy to handicap. DeMar, Caruso, Dosunmu, Kobe White, Vooch. Start them. Keep going. Phoenix has their main guys in. Also very easy to handicap. Durant, Booker, Nurk, Beal, Allen. Start them. Keep moving. That was nice. We made some headway there, didn't we? Spurs. Wemby is questionable. And there's no reason to push him if he's not 100% healthy. So I'm going to assume that Wemby's going to miss a ball game, which means you probably get a one-game Zach Collins stream coming up here, possibly later on today against the Suns in a rematch. We'll see. I guess you can't do anything right now until we know for sure. But when Wemby's out, everybody gets a big bump in what they get to do. So you'll probably, Trey Jones has been a start lately anyway, but you might get enough out of a guy like Keldon Johnson to make him kind of move up near the top 100. Vassell's a go. Zach Collins would be a go in that spot. And then Sohan would be I don't like his game regardless. We had a little kerfuffle in Houston, Utah. Chris Dunn and Jabari Smith Jr. got suspended for it. For Utah, John Collins is a start. Colin Sexton is a start. Walker Kessler is a start. If Lauri Markkanen manages to get his butt back in there, he would also be a start. And that's as far as I go against the games cap, because right now Keontae George is so inefficient that he's hurting far more than he's helping. Now, that could definitely change over the next couple of ball games. But this is what I was talking about at the All-Star break when everybody was like, oh, Keontae George, he's going to win you a league. And I was like, well, not so fast. Points and assists are nice, and the free throw percent is nice, but no steals, no blocks, not that many threes, and a horrible field goal percent, and very high turnovers. We're talking about young guard-itis. And it's the same for all of these guys. I'm not dropping him, though, just for whatever that's worth. I'm not dropping Keontae. There's sort of too much upside when he gets hot, but I don't know how you start him against the games cap right now. And then with Houston, am I going to start Jeff Green in their next ball game when he and Jock Landale are battling for center minutes? I am not. Jalen Green, on the other hand, man, has this kid turned it up in March. Crazy. He's just a totally different human being this month. You guys know I don't typically start guys when they're on a heater. I think this heater might be such a hot heater that I have to change my take on that. So go ahead. Why the hell not? Freddie VanVleet, Jalen Green, when he gets back, Jabari Smith Jr. Although with Jabari out, I wonder if Dylan Brooks takes enough shots to be fantasy relevant for 1 day. 2 days. Nope, 1 day. Dunn was 2 games. Jabari was 1. I can remember this. Denver, they didn't send a bunch of their starters to Portland. No Jokic, no Jamal Murray, which meant DeAndre Jordan played 20 minutes. I mean, he was fine, but you're not caring about that very much. If this happens again, the obvious choice to fill in is Reggie Jackson because he's going to get a bunch of shots, and that's kind of what you're looking for. And then, the other regulars are going to be asked to do more. But from a fantasy standpoint, first of all, the Nuggets won this ball game anyway. And then if you're looking at when are they going to have a difficult travel game? At least it wasn't that difficult of a travel game. They had a day off in between. There's whatever, the Blazers, they got nobody healthy. Thinking about where the Nuggets might go. Do they have a road game? Maybe the game in Utah, you might see that, or the last 2 games of the regular season, Spurs and Grizzlies. But, they're so close now to getting the 1 seed in the Western Conference. They're half game up on the Thunder. They are the 1. Maybe they just kind of go for it. Doesn't matter. For Portland, everybody was out. No Simons, no Ayton. Although Shaedon Sharpe just got assigned to the G League, so he's now approaching return in some capacity. No Jeremy Grant, no Malcolm Brogdon. They're down all of their established guys, which means you've got a whole bunch of silly season crap to sift through on this team. From a head-to-head standpoint, now Portland's schedule gets not good basically after today. They play today, and then they only have 2 more games this week, and they're on the overload day. So for head-to-headers, if you have a Blazer already, you hold them through today, but then you probably abandon ship tomorrow. For roto-leaguers that are trying to figure out who to use against a games cap, I can say with full confidence that I have no bleeping idea Because in this ball game, Toumani Camara played 39 minutes. In the previous one, he played like 19. I mean, there's no consistency at all. Camara was very good in this one. Points, boards, assists, steals, blocks, threes, good percentages. Duop Reith had a nice ball game here, but we've seen him completely vanish out of that center spot recently. Jabari Walker, 15 and 9, but he doesn't do much besides score and board. Scoot at 22 and 6. He's going to get a lot of usage while everybody's out. So maybe the answer is go ahead with Scoot and pray he doesn't shoot 2 for 19. Delano Banton's kind of the same story. Just pray he doesn't shoot 2 for 19, which is pretty damn close to what he did in this ball game. But that's the issue, though. Like, you can look at a team and you can say, oh, well, usage value, right? Well, yeah, I mean, oftentimes, yes. But for this Portland team, a lot of these guys are simply so bad at fantasy basketball from just like an efficiency standpoint that you don't want to risk blowing up a percentage or your turnovers on the roto side. There's a huge risk there that, in my opinion, outweighs most of the benefits. I don't know. Maybe it's possible that some of these guys come back. I don't know if Anthony Simons is questionable tonight. He might play. Ayton might play. These guys could show back up again. So I wouldn't invest too much time or resources into figuring out who to play for the Blazers for your fantasy team. Again, for one, on the head-to-head side, their schedule sucks. But for Roto, a lot of these guys do more harm than good, typically. Now, if somebody, like if Camara starts playing 36 to 39 minutes a ball game, I think I probably would change my tune because his fantasy game is not that awful, at least compared to some of these other guys. Duop Reith also has a little bit of fantasy potential built in there. And Scoot, yeah, I mean, the outlines are there. But there's so much downside with these dudes that I can't get over that hump. All right, let's play the old game. Who didn't play over the weekend? Dallas didn't play over the weekend. Memphis didn't play over the weekend. And that is it. Dallas and Memphis. Dallas didn't even play on Friday, so we don't even have to talk about them. Memphis did play on Friday, so let's get to the Memphis box score here so everybody can see what's up. I mean, okay. We got our answer. Who was going to play against a fellow tanky team? Desmond Bain sat this one out. JJJ sat it in. He played. Santi Aldama is just rolling right now, so he's a play. I thought this was going to happen weeks ago, but it's happening now, so, finally, I guess. John Conchar played good minutes, but he's now doubtful for the next ball game with some heel soreness. Desmond Bain is questionable with a back injury. Vince Williams, who was supposed to be one of the really good ones here, he's still dealing with some tendonitis. Jake LaRavia is sick. Oh, what the hell? We're back to this again. Memphis, they play today, they play Wednesday, they play Saturday. So a little bit of a clunky schedule on the head-to-head side. For Roto, Aldama, JJJ, those guys are goes right now. Oh, Luke Kennard is still out for personal reasons, and we don't know when the hell he's showing up either. I don't know how you go beyond those dudes. Aldama and Jaren Jackson. GG Jackson is going to have a ton of usage, but look what happened in this ball game. Imploded. Still at 14 and 8, and people are going to be like, oh, look, 14 and 8. But brutal shooting, brutal free throws, high turnovers, and no defensive stats. That's rough when it isn't going in. But I don't know how you make a call on these teams in advance because 2-3 guys could swing either way on the injury report. If Bain is in, you're not going to pick up these other guys that are trying to take shots on poor percentages. Maybe you consider it if he's not. It's too risky. Too rich for my blood. All right, what time is it now? About 10:15 a.m. Pacific. All right, let's see if we can get the streaming show going in the next 15 minutes. I'm going to try to go back-to-back today, and so that means we'll wrap this one up. Anybody got any questions? Let's do a quick chat room check, see if anybody has any questions that are not streaming related. That's a streaming question. Is Luke Cornett being slept on in a games cap format? That is a very good question. He's been pretty good. But a lot of the reason why is that Boston's had these back-to-backs. They were, they were on a 5-7 stretch where you knew they were going to go real light on their guys. Now I'm assuming that if Kristaps Porzingis is healthy, he and Horford should play in each of their 3 games this week, which really doesn't leave much room for Kornet. And by the way, one of the other reasons there with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum alternating days off, that opened up some more time in the front court. So, if Horford was in, they could go 2 big men, or if Porzingis was in, they could go 2 big men. With Tatum, Brown, Horford, Porzingis all healthy, they're just not much room for Kornet. Now, if we get to the ballgame, we find out some of those guys are getting ruled out. That does change things in my eye. And then every question here is on the streaming stuff. So, guys, wait around. We'll have our streaming show coming up here in the next couple of minutes. I do need to set that up and get this portion of the show posted. Again, thank you all for listening. Subscribe. Please like and subscribe if you're new and you're joining us to try to win your playoff leagues and make sure you get an edge here at the end of your fantasy season. I know some of you are still out there. Not as many as before, but some. I made a promise. Carry you to the very end here. I'm Dan Besbris. I'll talk to you guys in 15 to 20 minutes.